Hello again. This time I'm going to talk about your bashrc. This is a special settings file that is loaded before anything else. So when you log in, this gets loaded, and that's where you can specify all kinds of custom settings. So you can customize your user experience by using this settings file and adding things to it. Now actually this is like a glorified shell script, and I won't talk about those just yet, but this is some stuff you can do to declare new functions or create aliases or other things, and to customize stuff like this right here. My cool prompt, my custom one, was something I could define in my bashrc that is always loaded. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. Now the bashrc is actually located in your home directory, but the reason you don't see it with an alias is because it's hidden. I think I mentioned this before, but when you preface a file with this right here, so if you add that as a prefix, it's hidden by default when you do an ls, but you can always look at hidden files by doing ls-a. So now you can see that I actually have a bunch of these hidden files here, and there are a lot of settings files, and the one we're interested in is the .bashrc. So how you would get there is from your home directory, and no matter where you are, you can do this, for instance, and that would say that in my home directory, look for a file called .bashrc, and then open it. In this case, I'm going to just use nano, just a really basic editor, just so we can look. And now I'm going to just scroll down. I have a bunch of settings here. So for instance, this hist file size, you can modify this so that it will now store a bunch of lines. So if you ever get into a situation where you're like, geez, I wish it didn't get rid of those old commands I used, just ratchet this up a bit, and you should be able to hold on to way more commands now. So you can keep hitting the up arrow key or use your history thing to show all of them, and you can grep them, like I showed before, to find them. And then again, there are a bunch of other ones. These are some default stuff that we have included in everyone's bashrc. And here's an alias right here, the LL, which I think I mentioned before. And that's how you can get that useful list and other stuff. Okay, I'm going down here. Now I'm going to show you, okay, here's my bottom. So I'm going to show you something that at least introduces you to some of the concepts of this bashrc. So anything you edit in here and you save, you can then call up for later once you've imported this source file. So up here is an example of a quick function I had to make to format, I think, a proca file or database or directory. And now I can always call it up like it was a function, like it was a command. And then these are just some variables I export. But what I'm going to show is something called alias, which is something more immediately accessible to you. So alias is a way of kind of defining a word that actually represents a command or a series of commands. I kind of like one of the favorite ones that I have is something called my top. So let's just try and see what that would look like. It would be this right here. So what alias will do is that whenever you type in that name, this word, it's actually going to represent this command. So I save a bunch of keystrokes by doing this. And I think I mentioned top before, and what -u will do is only list the processes of a certain user. So in this case, I have it so that it only lists my processes, because this is actually going to be my username here. So now when I type my top, it does this command. So very quickly I can see what I'm running at any time. So you can come up with all kinds of useful aliases. I encourage you to kind of experiment, and you can save it with Control-O because we're in nano, so that would save it. I've already actually typed this out before, so I don't have to do it again. So be aware that this does exist, and I'm going to just go ahead and X out of this. Control-X. Now, this is only loaded at the start of your session, so if you make changes here, it's not going to know that. You either have to exit out of this and start a new session, or you can use the source command. What source will do is it will just import a file, like .bashrc. You can also source other ones, and that's how you can actually chain together multiple ones. So if you want to keep your cool custom stuff separate, you can have it so at the end of that bashrc file, you source the file that contains your stuff. So instead of having to keep appending to that file. But anyway, we can source this, and that would reload. Oh, I have this little thing, fun little thing that whenever I open up my session, a new session, it gives me like this random character and a random quote. It can be like a random fortune or just a random funny thing. So that's the thing you can do. You can customize it. And in fact, if you want to have this in yours, well, you can go ahead, and this only works in my server, but you could go ahead and stick that random at the end. And because this is always activated, like this is always loaded, it's going to do that little random thing at the end. So that's kind of like a cool thing you can do if you like. But anyway, so what that source did is it reloaded my bashrc, and then in this case, if I define something like a new alias, it is now available for me, and it will be available for future sessions. So this is just something you can try out. It can be fun. And later on, this is going to be very useful for you when you design things like workflows, because you can import and define your own functions. So keep in mind, .bashrc exists, and hopefully make use of it at some point.